Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now. We got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this. I am one of 4 kids. My older brother P, who I no longer have any contact with, my younger brother J, who is no longer with us, and my youngest sister K. Recently P's children, 2 girls and 1 boy, all in their late teens and early 20s, reached out to me and expressed a desire to have a relationship. I have 0 contact with their father and swore that I would beat him black and blue if I ever saw him again. My oldest brother P was always the golden child. No matter what he did, my parents always had an excuse for why it was not his fault. Bad grade? Teacher had it out for him. Cheating on every single one of his relationships? Good thing you did it to her before she did it to you. That one was my personal favorite. He also used to torment Jay and I constantly when we were smaller than him, until in high school, when I hit a growth spurt and sprung up to about 6 feet 4 inches and 230 pounds worth of muscle. After that I became the typical jock type, played football, partied, bunch of friends, etc. Well, my younger brother, Jay, didn't get as lucky and stayed pretty small and scrawny throughout high school and college, only getting up to about 5 feet 8 inches, and didn't have a super active social life. Despite the difference in our schooling experience, I was always very protective of Jay, especially since we were always having to put up with P's bullshit, which stopped once he realized I could pound him into the ground and not break a sweat, as he was also a lot smaller than me at only 5 feet 10 inches. Not much to say about Kay. She was a great younger sister and P didn't dare mess with her or he would incur the wrath of our mother. So, in the late 90s, Jay met his first real girlfriend, A, and was over the moon about her. He spent every spare moment with her, and when he wasn't with her, he would do nothing but gush about her. I had never seen him so happy. Well, one day, he comes to us, all smiles, and announces that A is pregnant and they are expecting. The mood quickly turned, however, when a week later it came out that A had been cheating on J for the duration of their relationship with our older brother P. This broke my brother, and of course P, being the golden shit that he is, didn't even get a disappointed glance from our parents. To this day I have never seen someone look so broken as J had looked the last time I saw him. I believe his heartache was only compounded by the fact that my parents basically told him to get over it and be happy for our brother. Well, about a week after this revelation came to light, Jay took his own life. I had never been so sad and angry at the same time in my entire life. Sad that I would never see my brother again, and the pure rage of knowing that this was my brother and parents' fault. During the funeral, P walked in with A and I saw red. Thankfully I had other family there to stop me from doing anything stupid, but I told P that if I ever saw him again, I would kill him. Shortly after that, I cut contact with 90% of my family, with the exception of K and a cousin I had always been close with, because everyone except them wanted to make excuses for my parents and P. Even though my sister was just as crushed about Jay's death as I was and was angry for a long time. She and her then boyfriend, future husband, hit a financial rough patch after graduating college and were forced to move in with our parents. Due to unrelated drama at the time, they couldn't stay with me. So my sister stayed with them for several years, and over that time their relationship improved, and even though I wasn't thrilled at the time, I understood. She still doesn't really have a relationship with P but is cordial if they meet. I don't blame her, because our parents did a lot for her and daughters love their cousins. So I didn't want to put her in that kind of position of choosing. I never had any kids, and truth be told, I never wanted any. I much preferred the role of the fun uncle. K met a great guy and had 2 daughters, who I absolutely adore. P had 2 more kids with A before cheating on her and splitting, and I've never met any of them. My parents have tried to make contact a handful of times, but I always told them to kick rocks. So last week, I'm chatting with K's daughters, 19 and 17, and they mentioned that their cousins have wanted to meet me for a long time and were hoping I would be willing to meet them as well. I don't believe they know everything that transpired between their dad and I, but I would be lying if I said I never had any desire to meet them. I am a 27 years old female, used to be an escort from 18 until I was 23. I'm not proud of it, but I did what I had to do to keep studying and a roof over my head. That's how I met my now fiancé, though he was never my client. We began to date when I was 25, and 3 or 4 months after that his brother-in-law exposed me. No idea how he found out, because there's no way my fiancé knew, and thus we had to come clean in front of his whole family. Yes, I did that. Yes, he knows. Yes, he doesn't care. It was 2 years ago. At that time, we got over it. After that there was a span of 3 to 4 months in where my mother-in-law and some of my fiancé's aunts and cousin police their husband when I was around. It was really weird tbh, because this dudes were like 40 to 60 years old and I wasn't that desperate. So my fiancé shut their bullshit hard, and even when his family still gives me the side eye from time to time, we thought it was behind us. He proposed last year, and 5 months ago we found out that I was pregnant. We were really happy about it, and we told his family as soon as we knew. His sisters and young brother were happy for us, but his mom took me aside and begged me to be honest with her and asked if this was really my fiancé's child. I was taken aback, but I just rolled my eyes and said yes. She gave me some shitty speech about how she only wanted to make sure, and that she was happy to be a grandmother. Well, last weekend we were at his parents' with his family and some of his friends, and we were talking about the name. How he might look, small talk. We will love him regardless, but there's always some, oh, I hope he gets your nose. MMH, I like your eyes. I hope he gets them. Comments. And my father-in-law said that he and his children have a birthmark in the inner tight, and that even his grandchildren, one of my SIL's kids, got them, so our baby might too. And then he said, but how can we know from who he got it? It may as well be from me, my boy, or my brothers. And he and his brothers began to laugh. My fiancé got mad, and before he could say anything I said, I don't get it, and my father-in-law was, yeah, because it runs in the family. And I said again, I don't get it. Why would he get it from you? And he began to get nervous and said, because you know, it's just a joke OP. And I said, but I don't get it, and you all laughed. Explain. It got to the point that some of his friends said, hey, it's not funny, so he excused himself and left. Later my fiancé's brother-in-law came to me and said that I was wrong for embarrassing him like that in his own house. and that I knew what the joke was about and of my past, I shouldn't be surprised. Now they're all demanding that I apologize to my FIL. My mom is a huge Harry Potter nut. She and my dad actually met in a Harry Potter IRC, like Discord but for old people. In the early aughts got married, had kids, and from day one decided to embarrass us for life by naming us after some Harry Potter and Star Wars characters. It's honestly been hell. I have a stupid name, and since we were little my parents have forced stuff like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Marvel movies, etc. down our throats. Everything is about dragons and magic and blah blah blah. I'm so sick of it. Every birthday, every holiday, everything is just organized around fandom. So just like every Christmas, the days leading up to Christmas we have to sit down every night and watch Harry Potter movies. I can usually get away with knitting or drawing on my iPad during this, but this year my mom was like, let's just have a technology and distraction-free night every night. I arranged to go over to my friend Missy's house instead for like 2 nights. Missy's family is normal and likes things a normal amount. My mom got really mad and started talking about how it's a family tradition and how I'm basically rejecting her, and went on her whole thing about how you wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Harry Potter. I finally had it and just yelled, I don't like Harry Potter. I don't like Star Wars. I couldn't help it. I started crying because I was just so frustrated, because everything always has to be about Harry Potter, this, Star Wars, that, and now that we're all older they started doing Game of Thrones. Everything is centered around some kind of movie or TV show or book series. Just once is I want my family to band around something that doesn't have to do with media or these nerdy things. We live in Utah where we have like 5 national parks, and even though I ask every year for my birthday, well, my sister called me saying that mom was angry and to just come home and to stop with the theatrics. I told her that I'm sick of having all this old nerd stuff cramped down my throat, and just once I want to have a normal time watching normal Christmas movies and not having to pause for lightsaber battles. Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin, though when he made more I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount, and I didn't want to be braggy about it, especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place, and in the process of having to submit our pay stubs it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career, but instead he started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am, that no English lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister, but it was for non-profit work making $22,000/year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity/equity/inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it, especially since I grew up blue-collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new/first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen and we haven't really talked since yesterday.